Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and Council meeting for July 10th, 2023. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge the council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Mortland, Councilmember Michael Palermo, and Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. At this time, I'd like to turn it now over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are for Mayor and Council to hear directly from residents on items listed on the agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for Mayor and Council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Residents are at the top of our organizational chart, and therefore it is imperative for Mayor and Council to hear from residents in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you fill out a comment card which are located at the back of the room and at the podium in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask, of course, that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which is and should be reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We also encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and informational items. We also encourage you to review and participate in the many offerings here in the city of Roswell. There are a number of events scheduled coming up in the city. The mayor will speak about those shortly. And these offerings promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we make Roswell the #1 family community in America.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. At this time, I'd like to call Pastor Orville Orgel from Restoration Church to the front for our invocation and moment of silence.
Let's pray. Father, your word instructs us to be thankful in every situation. So right now we just stop and we're thankful. We're thankful for each person here, those that are serving and loving our community and city. Give us your guidance and wisdom for decisions to be made. Give clarity of thought, empathy, and a deep sense of responsibility towards the well-being of our community. Open our hearts with compassion. Help us to understand the needs of the people we serve. Give us courage to make decisions that prioritize justice, fairness, and the common good. Lord, we ask your guidance and blessing on this city and on this meeting tonight. Finally, Father, I pray this, and I mean this with all my heart. Find us faithful. Find us faithful as we serve each other. Find us faithful as we serve this community. And most importantly, find us faithful as we serve you. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ogle from Restoration Church, and may we be faithful tonight to that calling. At this time, I'd like to call United States Army Captain Harold Earls IV to come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Go ahead and place your right hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain Earls. At this time, Captain Earls, I'm going to ask you to stay up there, and I'd like to ask the council to join me and come down for the first item on the agenda under the mayor's report, which is the reading of the proclamation for the esteemed Veteran of Roswell Award to United States Army Captain Harold Earls IV. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Captain Harold Earls IV, esteemed veteran. Whereas Harold Earls and his family are long-term residents of Roswell that embraces 8 generations in the area. Harold attended Fellowship Christian School in Roswell and later moved to West Forsyth High School when his father became a pastor at First Redeemer Church. Harold's baseball skills caught the attention of recruiters from Harvard and West Point, but he chose West Point so he could serve others and develop his leadership abilities. During his time at West Point, he excelled as a Kimsey Scholar and an All-American captain of the baseball team, setting a school record with 76 stolen bases and leading the team to 2 National Collegiate Athletics Association Patriot League championships. And whereas, while at West Point, Harold founded United States Expeditions and Explorations, a veteran nonprofit focused on conducting adventurous expeditions. After graduation, he attended the Infantry Officer Leadership course, graduating at the top of his class. Less than a year later, with the approval of the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Odinero, Harold led an active duty team of soldiers and a combat wounded amputee to summit Mount Everest, raising awareness for post-traumatic stress disorder and garnering significant media attention. Despite torrential conditions on the mountain and surmounting 70-mile-per-hour windstorms, Harold became the 7th youngest American to summit Mount Everest at the age of 23 and successfully returned all team climbers safely. And whereas following the Mount Everest expedition, Harold attended Ranger School just 3 weeks later, 22 pounds underweight and with a severely frostbitten toe. Against the odds, he successfully completed the grueling training and was awarded Charlie Company's Leadership Award. He then became the Distinguished Honor Graduate at Airborne School. While stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, he served as a light infantry platoon leader before being selected as the scout and sniper platoon leader for the 130th Infantry Battalion, a highly competitive position reserved for the best performing junior leaders. Harold was ranked #1 among all first lieutenants and was offered the general aides position, but declined in order to join the Old Guard in Washington, D.C. And whereas in the Old Guard, Harold served as an escort commander, laying American heroes to rest at Arlington National Cemetery and presenting the United States flags to their loved ones. He was selected to lead the operations for the Guard of Honor for President Bush's lying in state in the United States Capitol Rotunda, spending personal moments with President Bush's casket. Harold's exceptional performance and professionalism during this nationally televised event led to an interview for the commander of the Guard of Honor position at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Whereas after a rigorous selection process and extensive training, Harold became the commander in January 2019, earning the rare Sentinel badge along his fellow tomb guards. The Sentinel badge is the second rarest badge in the military, second to only the astronaut badge. With more than a 90% fill rate, Sentinels are required to memorize more than 17 pages of knowledge about Arlington verbatim, including punctuation, among many other grueling tests. Sentinels have an oath to uphold, a high integrity life for the remainder of their life, even after their tour of duty is complete. The Sentinel badge can be revoked at any point in a Sentinel's life if they do anything to bring dishonor to the badge. And whereas, leading the Sentinels at the tomb, Harold maintained the sacred vigil that has continued uninterrupted for 83 years, even during the pandemic. The Sentinels were recognized for their dedication by ABC News, featuring them as Persons of the Week. During Harold's tenure, numerous world leaders visited the tomb, where he and his Sentinels briefed them on behalf of the military. Alongside his duties, Harold and his wife, Rachel, co-authored a book titled A Higher Calling, which became a national bestseller and received prestigious recognition from Publishers Weekly for high literary achievement. And whereas upon Captain Harold Earl's retirement, The United States Army honorably bestowed the following medals: Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal twice, Army Achievement Medal 3 times, Sentinel Badge, Ranger Tab, and Airborne Tab. And whereas Harold currently resides in Roswell with his wife Rachel and their 4 boys, Harold works with Grove Mountain Partners, a private equity firm in Buckhead that invests in blue-collar businesses throughout the area, where he brings his exceptional leadership and experiences to contribute to the firm's success. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Harold Earls IV, esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve the United States Armed Forces. Harold, we all know that you don't like a microphone much. And obviously just reading that is just a glimpse of your amazing achievements at such a young age, and the great honor that you have been bestowed on so many occasions for your integrity, professionalism, and duty to this country. But I want to give this over because I know you'd like to share some words.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the City Council and Mr. Mayor. Enjoyed getting to know you and see all your leadership, over the past several years. I think for me, really, credit first and foremost goes to my faith. Really credit to my grandmother who's standing here, my aunt, my cousin Kristen, my mom. Really grounded me in what's most important and to have a foundation. And so just wanted to thank them, and thank God for just kind of having the opportunity. I think for me, I've been very fortunate to have some of the experiences that I've had, and I credit that really solely to me being able to stand on the shoulders of so many other people, from my family, from now at the firm that I work with, people believing in me that frankly shouldn't believe in me, but said, hey, I'm willing to give you a shot. And I think that's what life is all about, and it's something that I've tried to emulate in my own life. I think it's funny, you read the thing, I don't necessarily think I'm deserving of the esteemed award. I think there's some amazing veterans out there. I have to say, though, a couple of stories I do want to point out in regards to the frostbite. So I got back from Everest. We got hit with this really nasty storm. We ended up somehow making it down. And when I got back, my right toe was completely black. And, I'm stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. My commander's like, hey, you're going to Ranger School the very next class. And so I went and saw the good old Army doctor in Fort Benning, Georgia, who I'm pretty sure has never seen frostbite in his life. And he's like, yeah, I think we have to cut off your toe. And, I got a second opinion of the of the Army doctor out in Alaska. And he's like, no, let's not cut off your toe. Let's wait a year. And thankfully I did, because I have all of my toes. Yeah, that. And then, I think kind of the last thing I'll share too is I was able to go to Ranger School and make it through, but a piece that was left out there is I actually went the first time and I actually failed the ruck march, of all things. So I was 1 week in and I failed, something that should have been, relatively easy to pass. Here I was at sea level and all I had to do was walk from point A to point B, and I didn't pass. And so I think that, one, I've tried to learn not to ride the highs and lows in life, because I think that when you ride your highs is when you reach your lows. And I found that to be the case at 23 as a second lieutenant. Here I was thinking I was hot stuff coming off of Everest, and I think God has a way of grounding you. So for me, I've really taken that forward. I was able to, had an amazing wife. We trained together, and I was able to go right back and go straight through. But that's just something that I've tried to use as a guiding principle in my own life. So I'll end with that. Thank you all. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Earl.
They'll be for WSB TV, your local ABC.
So you can see that great picture of Captain Earl's there in Arlington. I think almost all of you are probably familiar with Arlington, and how sacred it is and what an honor it is for anybody to be named to be the honor guard. It's incredible. And Harold there made Ranger School sound like it was easy. It is one of the most elite, toughest schools that you could possibly go through. So pretty impressive stuff. Thank you, Captain Earls. The last item on the mayor's report tonight is, by the way, it's the middle of summer, I guess. If you guys know, it's July 10th. We're right here in the middle. The last item on the mayor's report is upcoming events and some other special announcements, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Want to remind everybody about our amazing new calendar website, Roswell365.com. People used it diligently for the 4th of July fireworks and are adding information and fun things to attend or check out. So please go look that up, Roswell365.com.
Lee, did we have fireworks this past week?
We had fireworks.
Thank you, Jeff.
We did. Jeff Leatherman and his entire team was out 24/7 for at least 2 days, working things out, checking the boundaries of Roswell Area Park and making sure it was safe and ready to go, and he delivered. Thank you, Jeff. Would like to point out that Music on the Hill is coming up Friday, July 14th. That's right here, right out these windows right out here. And we've been having land office business out there. So please come a little early and make sure you get a seat and just enjoy yourself. Invite some friends. Want to also point out that we have History Seek Saturday coming up Saturday the 15th. That's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can learn about Georgia's first gold rush while panning for gold. Maybe we should check that out. We could fund a few things with some of that gold. But please do come out. This is in regard to the 1828 gold rush. Find out what brought settlers to North Georgia and learn how to pan for gold. I'm slipping something in that the mayor doesn't know I'm slipping in, but I want to point out a Corridors or Pathways exhibit that Roswell Arts Fund is putting on for us this summer. It starts July 16th, and if you go to roswellartsfund.org/pathways, has a whole lineup for you with interactive artists. There's installations already there, some that you can play with and look at and touch, others you can just be in awe, and there's also some things to look for. They're called wood knots, and they're little critters in the hidden in the trees and such. So I encourage you to check it out. This isn't some wackadoo funky art thing that came from who knows where. This is actually pretty cool for all ages, and I encourage you to check that out. roswellartsfund.org/pathways.
Is that at Don White?
Oh, Don White, yes, and Riverside, but there are all sorts of things throughout, and goes all the way until September 23rd. So I encourage you to check the website so you can add things to your calendar and see what speaks to you. And then we've got that calendar lineup down there at Don White, so you can look at it, take a picture of it, and see when you want to come back. But it'll be a fun summer and into the fall, some interactive things, and if you're just taking a walk, you get a little extra credit down there. Then I also want to point out our next Alive in Roswell is Thursday, July 20th from 5 to 9. June did not disappoint. It was gorgeous weather, actually, which is remarkable. So hope you'll come. We've got all sorts of vendors, music. Please pay homage to our local restaurants and bars. Stop in, have a refreshment, get a bite to eat, and wander around with your friends. Also, the final thing I want to point out is Saturday, July 22nd. We have an open hearth cooking at Smith Plantation. If you haven't done this, you haven't lived in Roswell. So you've got to come meet Clarissa Clifton. She's a chef, and she works over an open fire, working in cast iron, and she cooks the best chicken I've ever had, vegetables, really fun. It's free. Right over here at Smith Plantation, wait, I'm pointing the wrong way. Right over here, you can park for free on city grounds, City Hall grounds. But she demonstrates open hearth cooking using recipes from both African traditions and known black female cooks, including Abigail Fisher, Flora Mae Hunter, and Mashama Bailey. So I encourage you to do that, and if you've already done it, do it again because it's really fun. So with that, I give it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lee. And I understand there's a celebrity bartender. I think celebrity is probably an overstatement, but there'll be a bartender at Alive in Roswell that's going to be raising money for a local charity.
Actually, do you know what that local charity is?
It will be announced the
Okay.
day before.
Mayor Kurt Wilson will be the celebrity bartender at Alive Alive in Roswell. So please come bring a few extra bucks and drop in the cup, and I believe that gets matched. Is that correct? Matched by Top Job, or is that by you, Mayor? So council
What a
will be
setup
bringing
that
big
is.
bucks so that the mayor has to match that. So that'll be in one of the bartending tents out in the street.
Mayor still owes me my tip.
Oh,
That's true.
All right.
You're right. I do.
So that's worth the visit right there. Come early, park at City Hall, run over, snap a picture with the mayor while he's pouring a cool beverage, and enjoy yourselves at Alive in Roswell,
Thanks, Lee.
July 20th.
All right, so we have a little special surprise tonight that is not on your calendar. So I want to point your attention to the very back of the room against the wall. Unfortunately, city rules prohibit us from buying gifts for people. So all we can do is say a special thank you and goodbye, and we're going to miss you because the local Appian media rep, that's the Alpharetta Roswell Herald that you probably read, our reporter in Roswell is Delaney Tarr. And Delaney has been with us for the last several months here in Roswell covering all of the fun stuff that goes on here. And we're going to miss Delaney. This is our last meeting with Delaney. So Delaney, stand up so everybody can say hi to you and wish you good tidings. Delaney, thank you. We'll miss you. All right, so next is the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding any items on the consent agenda? Okay. Is there any Roswell residents that would like to speak on any items on the consent agenda? Being that there are none, I'll bring it back for one last pass for comments or questions from council. Being that there are none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Hills. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Morthland. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the Administration and Governance Department. Councilmember Hills, would you please read the first administration item?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Item 1, approval of a text amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances by adding Article 8.11, loud and unruly gatherings in residential neighborhoods, Section 8.11.1 to 8.11.9. This is the second reading.
Thanks, Lee. City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance, sir?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to prohibit nuisances by creating a new Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 8.11, loud or unruly gatherings in residential neighborhoods of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the second reading.
Thank you, David. Councilmember Hills, would you like to pass this?
I would love to pass this over to my colleague, Councilmember Hall, my twin, to take over from here, please, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. As we discussed at the last meeting, this does not change the rules, our ordinance rules, but what it does, it follows suit in what we did with the spa and massage ordinance, where violators, the homeowners of the properties that are violating the rules will be able to be fined. Where presently, right now, it's just the violators, and this gives us the ability to fine the owners as well.
Thank you very much, Christine. Any comments or questions from council? Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Beeson.
One question. Apologies, I was not at the last meeting, so just a point of clarification. I know that we covered this during committee. It's probably an attorney or a question for the city attorney. At what point do we determine when the owner is going to be implicated versus just the property renters, dwellers, whoever's there?
So they could be cited initially, but most of the time we're going to give them a warning. That's how most of our stuff works. We're more of a compliance-driven than citation-driven. So if they are warned and then it happens again, then they'd probably be given a citation at that point.
And is that after a certain number of times or just after the first event? Because in this case, it's obviously an Airbnb, a renter, somebody who is cycling through the property as opposed to the property owner who would live there day to day. So would it be after one crazy party they get notified, or is it a series of events?
So if the enforcement officer, whether it's a police officer or code enforcement, goes out and there is a citation issued, then the property owner would be notified at that time. The next time it happened, then they would probably be given a citation also.
And is this applicable only to single-family homes or any type of private property?
This is residential neighborhoods, any residential neighborhood.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being that there are none, any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this issue? Being that there are no Roswell residents weighing in, I bring it back to council. Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. As I mentioned, I support this just to bring more accountability. And certainly, we've heard from a number of different neighborhoods over the years that would certainly like for this increased accountability with some issues that some neighborhoods were dealing with. So I think this is a good step, just another tool in the toolbox to increase accountability.
Just for edification, any other comments from council or question? Just for edification, this is just one amendment to an existing ordinance. This ordinance is already in place. All this is doing is adding the property owner as part of the equation. That's the only thing that's changing. With that being said, any other comments or questions from council? Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
I would be delighted. Thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve item number 1, approval of a text amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances by adding Article 8.11, loud and unruly gatherings in residential neighborhoods, sections 8.11.1 to 8.11.9. Second reading.
Thanks, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Councilmember Hills, would you read the next administration item, please?
Yes, sir. Number 2, approval of a resolution to adopt the city's 2023 to 2027 consolidated plan, the 2023 annual action plan, and the 2023 to 2027 analysis of impediments plan. And I believe Mr. Davidson or Mr. Alford?
Actually, I think it's Mr. Alford is going to come talk to the dais. Welcome, Charles. How are you? Great. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This first item is a resolution to adopt our 2023-2027 consolidated plan, our 2023 annual action plan, and our 2023 to 2027 analysis of impediments plan. Hoping my clicker works here. Go. Okay, so the city has multiple planning documents that are due to HUD in August. These plans are all prerequisites to receive our community development block grant funds through HUD. Let's see. So the 2023 consolidated plan it sets our 5-year goals for how we're going to spend our CDBG funds over the next 5 years. Our annual action plan narrows those down for a year-to-year basis. and it defines specific projects for annual funding. And then our analysis of impediment plan, it identifies barriers to housing and options and barriers to housing options and makes recommendations to overcome those barriers. We'll go through the consolidated process just a little bit here. And so back in June, the city hired Blue Link Solutions to work on our all three of these plans. First, there was a consolidated plan, and then it included 5 public input meetings, and the 3 of those were with the general public. One was with nonprofit leaders, and one was department heads. They additionally collected research through multiple sources. They also did a 30-day community needs survey, which opened in September. We got 216 responses. And ultimately what they identified was new construction of affordable housing was a major need for the city. So moving on to the annual action plan. Again, this defines or narrows down what we're going to do with those priorities or identify specific projects for our 2023 funding. And the city's official 2023 CDBG award was $442,071. This item was initially recommended or was brought to the 5-9 Admin Finance Recommend Parks Committee meeting. And there we presented what the consultants had recommended with affordable housing being a priority, as well as the administration to oversee that. They recommended giving 80% of the funds to the demolition and clearance of the Grove Way, 199 Grove Way, excuse me, with the Roswell Housing Authority. They also recommended allocating 20% or $88,414 to administration and planning for the city of Roswell. The HUD allows us to allocate 20% of the award for planning and administration, and it goes to things like CDBG or our grant specialist salary and oversight planning, advertising, as well as fair housing education. Last but not least, we had the 2023-2027 analysis of impediments, or the AI, and again, it identifies potential obstacles to equal access for housing and proposes strategies to overcome those obstacles. Through the research, Blue Links identified the lack of affordable housing, which we knew, barriers limiting housing choice, and a lack of fair housing awareness. So the recommendations were to encourage and support more developers in affordable housing, to support rehab of existing housing to preserve the stock, particularly for seniors, and review ordinances to eliminate exclusionary zoning, and then to conduct some annual promotion of fair housing and training and education. And so this whole process, we presented this at the 5-9 Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting. The committee recommended opening this for public review, which is a requirement by HUD. The comment period opened on May the 18th, and it closed on June the 19th. Drafts of the amendments, or not the amendment, but drafts of the plans were presented at City Hall, the city's website, the Housing Authority, and both Roswell libraries. We placed notices in the paper and on the city's social media sites. We received no comments. We also held a public hearing on June the 6th, and it was pretty well attended, but we received no written public comments there either. And so if there is no, that's a different slide. So the recommendation was to open that public comment period to see what we got back, and if we receive no comments, we would hopefully approve the plan for adoption. We would submit that plan to HUD, and then we'd be able to move forward with getting that approved and receive our CDBG funds.
Thanks, Mr. Alford. Any comments, thoughts, questions from council? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and thank you, Charles Alford. Mr. Alford has worked tirelessly on this and has tolerated me well with all my questions, probing and prodding on how does this work and what happens. I also want to applaud this mayor and council. In addition to last year's mayor and council, we're setting a precedent of being the first administration to really invest any time, much less effort, into rescuing an old dog, 199 Grove Way. So I really appreciate the support from this mayor and council this year to allocate the money from this year's CDBG money to demolitioning 199 Grove Way. And while it's, I guess, a sad thing to let it go, it really accomplishes so many things with what's to come. We're in the loan process right now. We'll know late October, maybe early November, whether or not that loan goes through to redevelop 199 Grove Way. And when we do that, I realize that we have a lot of local charities, nonprofits that support a lot of our folks that are in need or in a compromised situation. And so when this, I'm very positive about this, when this actually happens, this redevelopment, it will complement so many of the missions and visions of our local charities and our nonprofits. So for instance, there will be wraparound services for the residents that move in. We're given the first right of refusal to all of the relocated residents that were there prior to come back. This is a senior building, but it will ultimately open up to beyond that, I believe. But this will increase our affordable housing in the city from 40 units to 102, so that's a huge deal. The wraparound services include things such as tutoring for youth. It also offers some opportunities for our seniors in education and continuing ed. And these are things that Homestretch offers, things that North Fulton Community Charities tries to supplement our residents in need. The Star House and education for our youth in our elementary schools in particular. CDA, which is an ongoing tiny little children education base. So we're impacting so many. I feel like Drake House is another one. So all of our heavies that are doing heavy lifting every day, this will complement what they're trying to achieve as well. So I don't even want to apologize for dislocating the money pool for this period of time, because I know we're serving a group of folks that desperately need that, and it will at the same time improve the area from the living conditions that we had. So I really appreciate it. And Mr. Alford, if you wouldn't mind, just for those listening, if you would go into the action plan for the $442,000, where it's an 80-20 split. Would you mind just, I'm going to not do a great job with this, but administration 20%, that's not slush fund for the city. That's not just money to go into the general fund to just do what we like. Could you expound on that just a little bit so people understand what that is, please, sir?
Well, HUD has a ton of requirements and reporting that is, just required, and it's a lot of oversight, and we have a grant specialist, and a portion of her time is dedicated to that program. So this goes to help pay for part of that. She also does other grants for us as well, so that's very helpful. In addition, there's planning, like the development of this plan or these plans. Fair housing education, which we'll have to do. We usually hire a consultant to do those things. Advertising requirements to make sure we're doing enough to get information out to the public. We usually post in both the Herald as well as a Spanish newspaper. So all of those things add up over time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills, for your leadership. I know all of us are indebted on the council and mayor's office for all you've done. Thank you. Any other? Councilmember Beeson.
Couple questions. First and foremost, I noticed in the data set it's 8,133 residents are currently living below the poverty level in Roswell. Do you know if for this data set were long-term stay hotel guests, for example, those who've been living there for more than 6 months, considered as Roswell residents for the sake of this data?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
You're not sure? Okay. Another follow-up question for you. I noticed on one of the slides a couple back for the 20% of award funds can be allocated right there. The bottom bullet point, what is the city currently doing for fair housing education?
It's been a couple of years since we've done it, but we used to hire a consultant. We've hired a couple different consultants to have, we did an online fair housing education seminar. We hired a consultant. We also did one at the Housing Authority, and I want to say we did one at this Roswell Senior Center, but it's been a couple of years now. With COVID, it threw us off there, so we need to ramp that back up. We haven't done much in the last few years.
I realize that the the consolidated plan is pretty much a requirement in order for us to be able to submit for the CDBG funds. In this case, is that something that, and I could possibly task Councilmember Hills with, can we circle back on making sure that those programs are brought back in a post-COVID environment where we're continuing to do fair housing education programs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the consultant definitely recommended, and that's part of what that CDBG admin would go towards, is to make sure we're doing enough to get that education out there.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Vanstrom?
Yeah, Mr. Alford, thank you so much for all this work. I don't think I could sit down and put together 125, 130 pages of consolidated plan for everything you cover and take your time to do. I think it's a special talent you have, so I got to compliment you on that.
Appreciate it.
Peter, you're stealing his thunder. It's really Blue Links. He just didn't want to admit to it, right, Charles?
They did a lot of the lifting, for sure.
No, there's a lot of great data in here, and data that you can use across the board for all parts of the city. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? All right, I'll ask if there are any Roswell residents who'd like to weigh in on this. All right, I'm going to bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions. Councilmember Beeson?
Sure, one final thought that I just want to flag for the rest of council. Blue Links is the same vendor that previously put together the last consolidated plan, and as the one that put together this. There is so much good substantive data in these reports if you spend some time with it. In my doctoral program at school, I actually cited their last report because of the amount of data that went into the housing analysis for it. So I do appreciate how much detail goes into that, same with Councilmember Vanstrom. But I do want to flag that one of the main barriers, if you go to that slide for the AIs, one of the impediments that they have, so there's lack of affordable housing, which in this case would be a federally defined affordable housing, so you think of your Roswell Housing Authority, but there's also barriers limiting housing choice, and that's your non-federally defined, your NOAA, your naturally occurring affordable housing, as well as the lack of fair housing awareness. Part of what I just brought up with making sure we're bringing those programs back with a lack of fair housing awareness is we need to make sure that we're doing what we can on the city side to educate residents on their options. But I also want to implore the rest of council and mayor to look at those barriers limiting housing choice and going down to the recommendations, which is the reviewing of ordinances to eliminate exclusionary zoning. Every single time that we make barriers or we raise the bar or make it more difficult to have housing choice here in Roswell, and I mean that in the sense that you can have smaller options for housing, which are inherently more affordable than a larger option for housing. We move that goalpost even further for our residents, which in this case, you have 8,200 residents that are living below the poverty line. So moving forward, absorbing this report would be helpful, but actually implementing some of the recommendations would be exceptionally helpful for the majority of residents here in Roswell.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Charles, thank you so much for your time and your hard work. The city's indebted to you and your team. Councilmember Hills, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I would. Motion to approve the resolution to adopt the city's 2023 to 2027 consolidated plan, the 2023 annual action plan, and the 2023 to 2027 analysis of impediments plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Beeson. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Charles. Councilmember Hills, would you read the last administration item, please?
Yes, Mayor. Item 3, approval of a resolution to reallocate Community Development Block Grant CDBG funds to the Roswell Housing Authority. Mr. Alford, welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, so the city has unexpended prior year community development block grant funds in the amount of $80,362.65. This item was brought to the 5-9 Administration and Finance Committee meeting, and we recommended the funds be allocated to the Roswell Housing Authority for the demolition and clearance of 199 Grove Way. These would be to supplement the current funds we just talked about approving in the 2023 annual action plan. Don't quite cover the total amount of the demolition and clearance, so these reallocated funds would go towards that same goal. The reallocation required a substantial amendment to the city's current consolidated plan and a 30-day public comment period. It opened on May the 25th and closed on June 26th. Drafts of the amendment were available at City Hall, the city's website, Housing Authority and both libraries. Notices were placed in the newspapers and through the city's social media sites. Again, no comments were received. So if this is approved, we can submit this amendment to HUD and get these funds to the Housing Authority.
Outstanding. Thank you, Charles. Comments or questions from council? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Alford, and thank you to this mayor and council for agreeing to this. This does complement that previously aforementioned money to demolition 199 Grove Way, which is rapidly becoming a health and danger issue over there. So we do want to also see progress and get that demolition so nobody gets hurt or runs astray over there. I also want to point out, and Mr. Alford, you may be able to help me with the number. This is a great opportunity to, if we've had an organization that can't complete either the paperwork or make the funding work in something that they've applied for previously, in a previous CDBG grant cycle, previous year, that it can come back to the pool and we can decide how we want that money spent. And that recently had happened with CDBG CV money, which was special money on top of the regular annual CDBG money. This was during COVID. And we had one or two organizations that had money that they couldn't fulfill the terms, so it came back in, and we put that out to CDA. We churned it through our Rec and Parks Department and also considered Roswell Housing Authority. Rec and Parks, with the awesome, huge list of things we've got going with the bonds coming up, not to mention a full docket for our summer programs, their youth camp program, and some supplemental there, I believe, for seniors. Had petered out. A lot of folks had gone from online back into it and were not interested, so we decided not to do the Rec and Parks COVID money through CDBG, and then the Housing Authority, knowing how well we were working forward to redevelop this 199 Grove Way, had pulled back, and their participation there had really fallen off on the continuing ed for the adults and the youth. There's a smaller number of youth in the population there as well, and they weren't utilizing the tutoring. So this is a great way to put that money back into play immediately, and CDA said, we can take all of it, spend it on Roswell residents that have children attending the Children's Developmental Academy. Do you need to make an amendment to that?
Yes, that was the COVID funds. You're still talking about COVID funds?
I am, yes.
Okay, just
so
checking.
That COVID
Okay.
money went to CDA, and they already have that in place. So this is very similar to that, where this is not COVID money. This is money that was allocated to an organization or two that had committed to spend it on a certain project, and for whatever reason could not meet the deadline or the terms, and so they turned it back over to us, and here we are. So the timing couldn't be better. Again, I won't go through who all and how this is serving other communities. So anyway, I'm grateful for that. So thank you very much.
You know, one of the things that we don't talk about often, and it really is a major accomplishment, Mr. Knighton, of you and the city talent and staff and this council, and Lee, underneath your leadership, of how activated the city has committed to its housing authority to help solve problems, and what a difference it's making and what a difference it's going to make to the future of our community. So, Lee, thank you for your leadership. Thank you, council, for all of you for being so supportive. Mr. Knighton, thank you for your great work and being intricately involved, and Mr. Davidson as well, because you guys have been a big part of this process, so thank you. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council on this matter? Councilmember Beeson.
I will preface this with, I was not on council last year when the prior year's CDBG funds were allocated. In fact, I was quite a vocal critic about how last year's funds were expended, and I say this knowing that they were used for water lines. I realize that there's potential for health concerns, but the potential for health concerns related to asbestos, and I say this as a licensed asbestos inspector. But I think this year, this mayor and council has gone above and beyond of making sure that those funds were allocated for the best and highest use. And I really want to commend Councilmember Hills, because there was a massive tangle of forms and grants and can you do this, but you can't do this, but you can also maybe do this. She dedicated a lot of time to sorting through what can and cannot be done. Understanding as well that 199 Grove Way is a very high priority, especially in terms of timeliness. So I do want to commend Councilmember Hills for prioritizing this and what I would think is the best and highest use for these funds at this point in time, but then also making sure that CDA and others are saw through as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And criticism you know, I acknowledge.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being there none, I ask our Roswell residents if they have any thoughts, comments, or questions on this matter. Being there none, I bring it back to the council for one last pass. That being said, Councilmember Hall, do you have a motion? Councilmember Hills, sorry.
I
you
do,
have a
Mayor.
motion?
Motion to approve a resolution to reallocate community development block grant funds to the Roswell Housing Authority.
Thank you very much, Councilmember
you.
Hills. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Beeson. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Alford, for everything. Next is the Community Development Department. Councilmember Palermo, would you read the first community development item, please, sir?
Item number 4, approval of the proposal selection for the Unified Development Code Update, RFP 23-153.
Thank you, Mike. Would you like to ask Jackie to? Michael, you want to ask Jackie to come up?
I'm going to take over for
All
Jackie,
right.
if that's okay with you, sir. We expanded the
Welcome, Lenore.
agenda a little, so I thought I would draw the short straw on this. So this is the approval of the proposal selection for the UDC update, RFP 23-153. I thought I'd give you a quick timeline just to refresh where we've been. The RFP was posted on May 4th. Responses received June 2nd. We brought a recommendation for consultant selection of Kendig Keast Collaborative to committee on June 27th. The consultant did include a base bid, which is the general document approach, was the scope of services that was approved by council through our committee meetings. It also included 2 bid alternates, Proposal B regarding design guidelines, which was a part of that package, as well as a second one, Proposal D, which was the Encode Plus platform. During our committee meeting, we did receive guidance to move forward with that base bid only, which is for the general document approach, and then to reject the bid alternates proposals B and D. Council also asked us at that committee meeting to inquire to see if the selected consultant could complete the scope in that base bid within 90 to 120 days instead of the 6 months. Staff did meet with them. They committed to be able to produce the draft document that would be ready to then take through the text amendment process within 120 days of the notice to proceed, which will occur after the final contract award. They did also provide us with an updated scope of work to reflect that change in the time frame, as well as to adjust their price. Just as a quick point of reference, the procurement memo that was provided to you at committee and is also in your packet tonight includes the traditional recommendation to award the contract and to authorize mayor or city council to execute the agreement. However, tonight, staff is only asking for a request to approve the consultant at this time, and then we're going to finalize the negotiation because of the change in the scope of work, and then bring the contract award back to mayor council for authorization. So the action that's asked tonight is to request to approve the selection of Kendig Keast Collaborative to complete the base bid, to reformat the presentation of the UDC, and to authorize staff to negotiate that final price for approval by mayor and council at the July 24th meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Lenore. Are there any comments or questions from council? Councilmember Palermo, what a surprise. I didn't think you would talk on this stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Wilson. So my intent is to approve this action request from staff as written right here. My expectation from staff would be that when coming back to the July 24th mayor and council meeting, they are going to, A, have within the agreement documented the things that we had discussed and agreed upon at committee on making sure that the scope is very crystal clear. That's number one. Number two, of course, documenting any opportunities to expedite. And third, and of course, very important to our taxpayers, anything that can be done, of course, to reduce that price. Because again, mayor and council tonight, if they choose to support the motion, they are not approving any dollars to be spent. They are just approving staff to work on that agreement to bring forward to our next council meeting based on everything we've already discussed.
Thanks, Mike. Any other comments? Would any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? Being there none, I'll bring it back to council for any additional comments, thoughts, or questions. Councilmember Palermo, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the selection of Kendig Keast Collaborative to complete the base bid, to reformat the presentation of the UDC, and to authorize staff to negotiate the final price and terms subject to approval by mayor and council at the July 24th, 2023 mayor and council meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Halls. All those in favor, please.
Prior to the vote, I just do want to clarify, I said it would be exactly as this. I did add "and terms," so I just want to make sure that's clear for staff and clear for everyone to vote on.
Thanks, Councilmember Palermo. And do I have, that is seconded? Yes. All right, all those in favor of the, please raise your hands. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Councilmember Palermo, would you read the next item, please, sir?
Item number 5, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 10, Section 10.3 to Section 10.3.27, signs requiring a permit, Section 10.3.32, crown sign, and Section 10.3.41, sign illuminating, and Section 13.4.7, what approval criteria are used? This is the first reading. Ms. Dybel or Mr. Davidson?
Thank you. City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying Article 10, Site Development, Section 10.3, Signs, and Article 13, Administration. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend Article 10, Section 10.3, Signs, and Article 13, Administration of the Unified Development Code, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this is the first reading.
Thank you, David. Councilmember Palermo, would you turn it over to Community Development?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Jackie Dybel, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. This is the first reading for text amendment to the Unified Development Code. As stated, Section 10.3, 10.3.27, 10.332 for crown sign, 10.3.41 for sign illumination, and 13.4.7 what approval criteria are used. 10.3.32 under the crown sign. Currently in the code, with these proposals would be what's listed in red here, would be to allow a crown sign to be on buildings less than 55 feet, 4 stories, to be approved by the mayor and council. Also, under number 4, to have a crown sign to be internally or externally illuminated. We're adding the words externally illuminated due to the fact that in the historic district, signs cannot be internally illuminated. 10.341, a crown sign may only use external illumination in the historic district. And then under dimensions, for DX and DS, the downtown mixed use and the downtown shop front, maximum square footage per sign, 150 square feet. Under sign illumination, for crown signs in those 2 categories, DX and DS, the zoning can be, the sign illumination can be halo or backlit with a Kelvin rating of 3,000 or lower. The 3,000 number is taken from the historic district. That's the number that they've used over the last years. And this would be a conditional use. So the crown sign would not be allowed by right. It would be a conditional use, which means an applicant would be required to submit an application to the Community Development Department to take it through the process for approval by the mayor and council. This is showing the Kelvin scale. 3,000, which is over on the warm side, is the number that the historic district has used over the last few years. This is the amendment for 13.4.7. Sorry, the typing at the top is incorrect, but it's to create letter E for conditional use for signage, that the sign must be located on a building containing 4 or more stories, unless approved by the mayor and council, be located on a 3-story building, and that signage allowed must be in association with an office use that occupies the upper floors of the multi-story building or a hotel use. Any other type of use would not be allowed to request a conditional use for a crown sign in the historic district. A couple examples that we received from the possible applicant to show what this would look like on the top of their building at Southern Post. And this is just the letters to show the non-illumination and how they're located as flat. This was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. They determined it was not appropriate for the historic district. However, they did indicate that if the text amendment is adopted, that the Historic Preservation Commission would like to be a part of the review process for the signage if it goes through the conditional use process. The Planning Commission followed suit with the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation. They recommended denial based on the Historic Preservation Commission's meeting from June 14th, feeling that the crown sign was not appropriate in the historic district. Do you have any questions for staff?
Thanks, Jackie. Any comments, thoughts, or questions from council? Councilmember Beeson?
I have a question. So with the assumption of denial following the HPC's recommendations that it's not historically compliant or historically appropriate, what type of signage would be on a hotel in the historic district at this point in time?
So currently on a hotel, if it's 3 stories, they would meet the requirements, what we have in the city, in the code. But these, we have numerous buildings over the last few years that are taller than the 3 stories. So a wall sign is only allowed to go up to 18 feet above the sidewalk. So anything that's over that would require it to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow it to go higher. So currently, the hotel that will be built over at Southern Post has already actually been through the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow for a projecting sign to go above it, up to the 4th story, for when it does get built. But if you're 3 stories, you normally can make the wall sign work, but not where this sign is looking to go at 55 feet. You're going to be over the limit for a wall sign. So they would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals in order to allow for the wall sign to be located at the top of that building.
And to clarify, if they did go through BZA, it would not look like that. It would be the projected style, which you mentioned, which is, it would stick out but low profile, correct?
No, not if, well, if a crown sign's not allowed.
Correct.
Then they would do a wall sign. So it would look something like this because they would have to ask for a wall sign. A projecting sign, which is different than this, would stick out from the wall and the side of the building. And that is an allowed sign. It's allowed to go above the 4th story, but below the 5th. So think about it, one section down from where that tenant sign is listed on the drawings. And they can do that right now.
Understood. To flag the rest of Mayor and Council, I don't feel super strongly, as I did during the last previous discussions about signs. I understand and I'm sympathetic to HPC's recommendation that it's not historically appropriate. That said, I'm also very sensitive to the fact that it would be very helpful with wayfinding, given the fact these are hotels for people who are coming from out of town, and it's not very intuitive as to where they would be located, and you're trying to find them in an area you're not super familiar with. So,
Thanks, Sarah. Any other, Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. And so I actually, I'd say I share the lack of passion. So this is a topic where I certainly see both sides of it and not strongly feeling one way or another. I think if the concern is wayfinding, at the end of the day, there are, as stated, there are signs, there are ways available. And in addition to the wall sign, isn't there also, I forget what you call it when it's the hanging sign, the blade? So the blade sign is something that'd still be available as well, right?
That's the projecting sign, yes.
Oh, that's a projecting sign, okay.
Projecting blade sign, they're the same thing, it's just different terms.
Okay, so it's there are other ways. I think in reality, it's from a wayfinding standpoint, the signs that are available are probably more appropriate, whereas in the crown sign is more for further away, just to be to see it in the sky, and I'm leaning towards wanting to just follow the recommendation of HPC and Planning Commission, knowing that signs are still available, but not changing it to add crown signs. So that's my current thought process. And again, the example of the hotel, I think that makes sense when you have somebody from out of town, and I probably don't see a big negative of having it, but you know, with needing to protect the character of our historic district, if a company's moving in here that's just who knows what the name could be, et cetera, just is that what we want everybody to think of when they see our really the sky above our historic district. So I think it makes sense on the discussion.
Thank you, Mike. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree, only I am more passionate about this. I think this is way too sexy and big city to go in our historic district, and I am absolutely against it. I like the projecting blade sign a lot better. I think it fits. And to your point, Councilmember Palermo, I don't think that we need to have advertising of a hotel being seen up and down a highway or street. I just don't think that's the message that we would want to send in our historic district. Other areas of the city, I'm game. But historic, no thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Morthland?
Ms. Dybel, refresh my memory, when we were discussing this earlier, the example that we talked about was the sign that's maybe in front of the Fox Theater as being a blade sign or a projected sign. Is that a decent example?
So the sign on the right, where it just actually says projecting sign, you would think about it more of the vertical, maybe not the square one, but more of the long, lengthy one. That's going to be more of what you're going to see on the building. That's a projecting sign.
Thank you. It's nice to see the picture.
Yes.
Thank you, Will. Councilmember Hall?
Thank you, and I do agree with Councilmember Hills. The crown signs aren't appropriate in our historic district. Along 400 or the corridors, that's where they make sense, but I'm not in favor of seeing them in the historic district.
Thank you, Christine. Councilmember Benstrom?
Am I correct that there are 2 hotels that are currently in the works in the historical district? And both of those have been working fine with the existing?
So the hotel at Southern Post will be doing a blade sign. They've actually went to the Board of Zoning Appeals in order to get the blade sign up at the height where they are looking to go. And they've gotten approval already for that when they actually get built and put their sign in there.
And West Alley has not come forward with
No.
any, okay. But I'm assuming since they are on their way to working hard on financing, that they're working within what already exists. And that's kind of a nice example that with what we have currently, it seems to be working. We have 2 great hotels that hopefully will be coming in.
Thank you, Peter. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Are there any Roswell residents that would like to weigh in on this particular issue? Being there none, I bring back to council for any parting thoughts, comments, or questions. With that being said, Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion?
So this was definitely a helpful discussion, and glad to hear it went smoothly for the hotel that will be going next to Southern Post. I'm a little concerned that the other one has not talked about signs or anything, but hopefully that will change. I do want to remind everybody that we're purely talking about within the historic district. And so if there's anyone out there that wants to have a really great spot for a crown sign, the 4 corners of 400 and Holcomb Bridge Road are certainly ripe and certainly allowed to absolutely have a building with a very large crown sign. That being said, I motion to deny item number 5, the text amendment to the Unified Development Code.
Thank you, Mike. So you're for item number 5, you're motioning to deny the first reading, correct, sir?
Correct.
Is there a second to that denial?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All in favor of the denial of item number 5, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. It is denied. Thanks so much. Councilor Palermo, would you read the next community development item, please, sir?
Item number 6, approval of the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 4, Corridors and Node Districts, Section 4.5.2, Use Table, and Article 9, Use Provisions, Section 9.7.19, Outdoor Storage, General. Ms. Bromberg? And Ms. This is the initiation, yep.
Yes, thank you. So the text amendment would include two sections, 4.5.2 as well as 9.7.19. 4.5.2 is the use table in Article 4, corridors, nodes, and districts. And this would change under PV for outdoor storage general, which is currently not allowed at all, would be conditional use. So this is only in Parkway Village. And then for the definitions in section 9.7.19, which are the use provisions for outdoor storage general, there are two changes. The first is under the definition to add for sale or rent at the end of contractor's equipment, just for clarity. And then the use standards, where it is limited use, does not have any changes. Where the allowance is a conditional use, it may be permitted subject to section 13.4 and the standards below. 13.4 is where it comes to council. And then the outdoor storage area must be fully screened from view from the public right-of-way, public parking areas, and abutting properties using either a type C or D buffer. I will show a reference to that in just a moment. And then the outdoor storage rental or sales revenue shall not exceed 5% of the annual revenue for the store location. And I will refer to Mr. Davidson, but my understanding is that if this were passed and gets through the process, then that would be captured in the occupation tax business license process, probably through the form of an affidavit like we do with some other similar reporting methods. And then just for reference, these are the type C and D buffers and the planting requirements that are required for those when they do apply. I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Lenore. Does council have any comments, thoughts, or questions on this matter? Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Ms. Bromberg. Can you go back one slide, please? My question for this council is, and of course, this is just the initiation. So of course, if this gets initiated tonight, then it would certainly be going to Planning Commission. It would be coming back to council for a first reading. If it passes a first reading, it'd be coming back to council for a second reading. So there's obviously a lot of opportunities for public discussion and multiple votes. But basically, my question for this council, as well as my question for Planning Commission, is just basically if the choice of type C or type D go far enough. And the reason I ask it is because I am supporting initiation of this text amendment. I think it is very important that it's completely screened from neighboring properties as well as from the road. And to me, type C and type D seems like it makes sense. But again, if this council or the public or Planning Commission have any suggestions, it's certainly something I think we should take into consideration.
Can I ask you a question, Mike? Has there been a discussion with, I know there's a particular business that's interested that's moving this motion forward. Has there been any discussion with them about C or D?
There's been discussion on that that without a doubt, if anything were to change, it would absolutely have to be fully screened and not be seen by neighboring properties and from the road. I'm not sure if there's been discussion specifically around type C and type D.
Who's been in discussions with them? Jackie?
But no, I don't think we had any discussion specifically about the type
Christy,
of
you have?
screening in those meetings.
Any-
I don't believe we had any conversations with them about the type of screening, like the C or D buffer was not a part of our conversation with them.
But that particular business knows that if it's passed, it's coming.
Correct.
They just don't know the extent of it.
Correct.
Okay, so back to Mike's question. So Mike's asking, does council have a thought on C or D, correct?
And just wanting to make sure that council, as well as the Planning Commission, et cetera, would feel that this is fully screening it from neighboring properties and from the road. And again, absolutely the opportunity to make adjustments in the future. This is something I just want this mayor and council to keep on their radar, as well as the Planning Commission, and of course, anybody else listening in.
Can I ask a dumb question? On D, screening wall height's not required.
Correct. If you have the wider 40-foot buffer, you have basically 4 rows of planting of evergreen trees, and so the wall is not required. If you're going to do a narrower, shallower buffer, then the screening wall provides extra screening for the neighbors.
Yeah, I got it. I'm just kind of curious. Okay, thanks. Any thoughts on Mike's question, Councilmember Hall?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is, and this is for my colleagues on council, if a natural buffer exists that perhaps doesn't meet some of these depth requirements, but there's existing mature trees and bushes, would a fence also, could in lieu of C or D, could you do a fence? Because you might even be more effective than clearing the area to try and meet these buffers.
Let me, Michael, forgive me for saying this. This is a great question. but rather than discussing it on the dais, let's stay with the matter at hand, which is the approval of the initiation of a text amendment. Forgive me. The approval, we are on item number 6, are we not, Michael? 7, approval of initiation of a text amendment to UDC. 6. Okay, yeah. Approval of initiation of a text amendment to UDC, Article 4, corridors and nodes districts, Section 4.52, use table, and Article 9, use provision, Section 9.7.19, outdoor storage general. That's the question at hand. So with your permission, can we stay on that question? And are there any comments about that question related to, unless you want to, I would like that to get in two sideways on Section 2.4 buffers.
Well, the irony is the way I think it's relevant is, I'd say for me personally, and just something to be aware of, is I'm less concerned if it's a type C or a type D or any type. What I'm more concerned is just the literal aspect of, can you see it from a neighboring property or the street, yes or no? So in other words, hypothetically, to Councilmember Hall's point, maybe it could make more sense to, as long as there's trees blocking it and have an 8-foot fence, then that actually might accomplish it, and the more flexibility, the better. But I don't think that's anything we have to hash out tonight, because again, I look forward to the Planning Commission weighing in, and obviously we'll be seeing this 2 more times.
And I have a sense that probably the entire council agrees with you and Councilmember Hall's on that thought, the buffer piece, or wherever that looks like, that's an important component. And that ironing that out in this process is going to come. Fair enough? Okay. All right, so are there any thoughts? Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Beeson.
Can you go back to the requirements that are being added? This one. Could somebody provide clarity on B subsection 2, outdoor storage rental sales revenue should not exceed 5% of annual revenue? Where does the 5% come from, and what's the motivation for including that line?
To Councilmember Palermo on that.
Well, I think we talked about it in committee, didn't we?
I was not in committee for that one. But to the point, I would like clarity on how 5% specifically was selected.
Councilmember Palermo.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, committee, what we discussed is put the Parkway Village has just an exceptional character, and I think a character that I think is important to preserve. And frankly, having the popping up of places that are having a large percentage of their focus and their business being for outdoor storage, I don't think is going to help the character of the Parkway Village. And so I think if we are going to allow something like this, that it really should not be a focus. And frankly, I feel 95% of what they're doing should be not outdoor storage. So that's from my standpoint, and my view on what I will support, because again, I think the Parkway Village is the character's too special to turn it into a destination for outdoor storage.
Sarah, so I asked that same question in committee, and so the answer that I got, and so I can't remember who answered it, was that the business that is pursuing this particular amendment was in knowledge of the 5% and agreed that the 5% could work for them. Because I asked that question in committee, like, where'd the 5% come from, and does it work for the business that's applying? And the answer was, Lenore, who gave the answer in committee? I can't
I
remember.
honestly don't know the answer to that, sir. I was not me.
I gave the answer.
I believe Councilmember Palermo.
Because you talked to the business, correct?
I let them know that I would not support something just outright where it's becoming a lot of outdoor storage, but I let them know that I would support, if it's something that it's not exceeding 5%, and they said that's something that they would that would work for them.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yes, ma'am.
I ask to be slightly rhetorical. I hear your reasoning, Councilmember Palermo. I think it's slightly silly as we're coming off of having a fireworks hut in the middle of a parking lot in Parkway Village.
I actually oppose that, and I actually think we should look at
ways around
discussing
it.
that.
I hear you. It's obviously temporary, that it's not a permanent fixture, which we're looking at a permanent fixture. The same exact business that we're considering this for already sells trees and bushes and mulch and a variety of other items in the middle of their parking lot. So to me, it seems slightly silly to get into the 5% weeds aspect of it. I think the 5% part, I realize it's slightly enforceable and you're using the occupational taxes. We're really taking, it's an honor system in that. Was this sold or purchased outside? I think it's not really enforceable in the end of it. That said, I also think that changing this in order to accommodate, and I'm good with it. I'm good with all of the language, the exception of B subsection 2, because I realize that we're doing this to accommodate a major corporation that is housed currently in Roswell. Love it, all for it. Let's keep having them here in Roswell. But it's kind of biased towards our mom and pops, who might not have a large storefront or a massive parking lot that they would be able to utilize for this situation. So I think getting into the 5% annual revenue for the store location is a little pedantic. Otherwise, I'm completely fine with the rest of the language.
Thank you, Sarah. Councilmember Palermo?
So there is a lot of interest for outdoor storage rental, and without a doubt in Roswell, they can store heavy equipment and rent it out on Highway 9. But if we change this where it's allowed in Parkway Village, the Parkway Village will become the outdoor storage rental headquarters, and I don't think that aligns with the character that we intend for the Parkway Village.
Thank you, Mike. Councilmember Hills?
Thank you, Mayor. I completely agree with Councilmember Palermo, and I hear where you're coming from, Councilmember Beeson, but I think the whole idea here is with the plants and trees and shrubs that you mentioned, there are so many hobbyists that do this themselves, and to be able to rent a pickup truck or a trailer or a chipper, I've rented all those things. And it doesn't take a huge lot to have that need, and it's great. I mean, I've gone to Cobb County every time to rent mine. So I think it's important that we have some of those accessible here in the city of Roswell, but not to be front and center. I do think it breaks down the charm and look that we're after on Parkway Village, and frankly, I'd like to continue that all the way over 400 and down through the east side to Johns Creek line there. So I just would hate to have more of that. And I'm not saying this individual company has the lion's share of that. There are plenty of other places that mom and pop shops can and do have rental places, but I think it's important to protect what we have, and it looks and feels pretty, and they do land office business at this place, and I'm in full support of that being fully shielded.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo?
And actually, I just want to give a realistic example. I was pretty happy when this council unanimously supported when we did the update, which is now going to be the cat clinic. So the cat clinic that was on Canton Street is now going to be within the Parkway Village. That's an example where the cat clinic would not be able to go in there if instead we were saying that this is the location for the outdoor storage rentals places. So I think that's a great example where the cat clinic, I think, is really enhancing the character of the area, and I think we want more of that and not it turning into more industrial, which is why I think 5% is appropriate to ensure it's not going to be the majority of properties.
Thank you, Mike. Peter, did you want to say something? Peter?
I drew the short chair this meeting because I missed the last one. And so I just want everybody to know that's why I'm sitting so short, and that's what kind of my comment has to do with. I was able to get back from vacation and watch the committee meeting last, and Councilwoman Halls brought up a question about CX. Is this business also located on the east side of town? And I'm just wondering, and I look, this is only initiation. I got a lot more time to look into this, and I certainly will be. But if I could understand why this also wouldn't include the East Roswell location and beautification and monitor of that particular location of this outlet as well.
Thank you, Peter. Councilmember Mortland?
So back to the question at hand here and the 5%. I think it's good that we have the 5% here because we're giving our business clear, definable attributes around what we're expecting of them, instead of them being super successful, overly successful, going in and figuring out that this is a new cash cow for them and they're going to remove half the storefront and go back in with all rental equipment within half that block building. Having the 5% here gives them their marching orders around what we expect out of them. So this is very positive.
Thank you, Willie. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being that there are none, Councilmember Palermo?
So I just actually want to expand on Councilman Vanstrom's question, which I think staff is
Yes,
aware of.
if you don't, I just pulled it up just to confirm. So today, outdoor storage general, and just as a point of reference, this is an accessory use. It's not the primary use for the business. It's in the accessory use category. Is not allowed in any of the corridor and nodes districts except for CH. So commercial heavy is the only place it's currently allowed as a limited use.
Councilmember
And that
Vanstrom?
other store is CX?
Yes.
Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Palermo?
Just on the line of questionings for Councilman Vanstrom, the store in question is specifically asking about this one location, and so they're aware of they're aware of what the rules are, and specifically focused on this one with their request.
Councilmember Vanstrom, does that answer your question at all? I know you want to do some further research and get more into it, but does it answer your question tonight?
No, and I don't want to go too into detail on the dais. I mean, that generally did, thank you, but I just wanted to put that out there that today I may not be voting, that I'm as comfortable, and I'd like to do a little more research, so.
Thank you, sir. All right, with no other comments or questions from council, Councilmember Palermo, would you like to make a motion? I'm sorry, we'd already been to the public and back. Yeah, we're back. This is the end. This was a last minute, one last comment from Michael Palermo that turned into, right.
I see a lot of people that want to get up and speak again.
Councilmember Palermo, would you like to make a motion, sir?
Motion to initiate a text amendment to the UDC Article 4 Corridors and Node Districts, Section 4.5.2 Use Table, and Article 9 Use Provisions, Section 9.7.19 Outdoor Storage General.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Halls. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Councilmember Palermo, would you read the last community development item? Thank God Almighty, right?
Item number 7, approval of the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Section 5.3.4 Carriage House and 5.5.2 Use Table.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome back, Jackie.
Thank you. So as stated, this is the initiation for text amendment to Unified Development Code, Section 5.3.4 for Carriage House and Section 5.5.2 for Use Table. So this is the section out of the code for the Carriage House in Article 5. This is showing the conditioned space. Currently, under the code, we have 500 square feet. With this text amendment, if it's initiated, at this point in time, it's showing to go up from 500 to 700 square feet. If it goes through the initiation, this would be one of the proposed changes. And the second change is related to Carriage House, an existing lot for a conditional use. So currently, a carriage house, whoops, wrong way. Too many buttons. Anyway, currently a carriage house is allowed in the DX classification and the DR classification of the downtown districts. This would be a proposal to allow for a carriage house in the DH classification. So stated, this is what this is indicating for, to allow for a carriage house to be a conditional use in the DH downtown house classification. And one of the questions that we had was, how many parcels do we have in the historic district? We have 118 parcels that are currently zoned DH downtown house. So I wanted to bring that forward to show that this is how many parcels that we have here. So if this text amendment is initiated and moves through the process and is adopted, there are options for people to have those on there. I'm sorry, it's the dark purple. Those are outlined in blue. That's on the map. It's hard to see. I can see that. But the GIS person that did this outlined those parcels in blue for you. It's the very, very dark purple shade. Sorry.
It's highlighted by turquoise.
They're turquoise? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yeah, just 118 that are applicable.
118 that are applicable. If this change is adopted and goes through the process and approved, to allow for the DH to have a carriage house to be a conditional use. So the conditional use would mean it would have to come before mayor and council. So just because if this text amendment is adopted, doesn't mean somebody coming forward, they still have to be approved by mayor and council.
Thanks, Jackie. Anything else?
No.
Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions on this matter? Councilmember Palermo, I see you kind of waving your hand.
So I certainly am open-minded to the discussion of allowing for conditional use for carriage houses. What I am leaning towards, though, is I would like the opportunity for us to hear from the the HPC just to hear if there's anything that we're not considering. And the thought process is twofold. One, just in general to hear from them, because clearly this is a historic district zoning. But number two, there are a lot of this zoning classification within the Mill Village. So my preference would probably be before we initiate it to just make sure with the HPC or whatnot, there could be awareness just to see if, to make sure people in the Mill District where there's a lot of these are just aware of the potential change and just for us to hear those different perspectives. So those are kind of my two initial thoughts so far. Again, definitely interested in this discussion, but want to make sure we're not rushing it given it is potentially affecting 118 parcels.
Thank you, Mike. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? All right, with no thoughts at this time, are there any Roswell residents that would like to address this matter? Being no Roswell residents, I bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions. Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion, sir?
Well, I didn't hear too many protests to my comments. So my preference would be that I motion to send this to the HPC for their buy-in, and as soon as they can meet and discuss, it is then scheduled on the next regularly scheduled mayor and council meeting.
So there's a motion from Councilmember Palermo to send this particular initiation of a text amendment to not pass it tonight and send it to the HPC for review. Is that correct, sir?
That's right.
Okay. Is there a second to seconded by Councilmember Morthland? All in favor of the amended motion by Councilmember Palermo to send this to the HPC, not pass it tonight, but send to HPC, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Lenore. Next is the Public Safety Department. Councilmember Beecham, would you read your first item, please?
Approval of a resolution for the extension of an intergovernmental IGA agreement, IGA, between the City of Milton and the City of Roswell regarding fire apparatus fueling services. Chief Panino.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is an extension of a one-year agreement that Mayor and Council signed in February of 2022 for fueling with the City of Milton. So as you know, station... Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm on the next one. Sorry. I'm off tonight. My bad.
Okay. All right, we'll get there. We'll
Yes.
get there.
You get me always dazed and confused with your magnetic personality, as you know.
I get that a lot. So Station 26, as you know, is off of Cox Road, and the closest fueling place for them is Hembry, off of Hembry, where the City of Milton Fire Station 41 is about 1.5 miles from that station, and they have fuel pumps on site. So it's really the difference between 1.5 miles versus a 13-mile round trip. And this is something that we talked through in February of 2022, the benefits, not only saving costs, we could provide them fuel cards where they could fuel at a retail gas station at a higher price per gallon, or we could have them continue to fuel at Hembry or Dobbs. What this does is it allows us to get fuel at a government rate and also keeps them in district for a higher percentage of the time and puts less mileage on the vehicle. The difference between this agreement and the one signed in 2022 is it also adds Fire Engine 22 off of Crabapple, which is also closer to Station 41 than it is a Roswell fueling site. Instead of it being a one-year agreement, this extends the agreement for 5 years and also allows the city administrator to sign future agreements or to extend the agreement past that. I'll answer any questions you have about the IGA.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Fire Chief Panino. Comments, questions from council? Councilmember Palermo?
So I certainly support this. As you mentioned, it's saving fuel and costs. So of course, I'm fully supportive of that. I guess just what I'm not understanding is why did this come straight to council, or was this at committee first?
It came straight to council, and that's on me. Essentially, Milton reached out and reminded me that this was supposed to be renewed in February. So I'm trying to get it approved so we can continue our current operation of fueling at Station 41.
Okay, so basically, because it's overdue, brought it straight to council instead of committee first, or do you think so?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sarah, did I forget on this one? Because this one's kind of I remember some of the IGA conversations. This one is just not resonating with me for some reason.
No, we were going to go over it in the check-in, and then the check-in was canceled.
Okay. So I got a question, Joe.
Yes, sir.
5-year IGA sounds good on, merit. What's the ability to update the IGA?
Which, what aspect?
Something changed, something material changes, and we need to update the IGA on one side of the equation, Milton or Roswell.
It gives us a 90-day out with either party, so I
Okay.
believe that's all we would have to do.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Yes, sir. Yes, sir? Yes, ma'am.
Randy's probably
Yes,
going to say
sir.
the same thing I was. I think it's
Claire,
a
it's
90 day,
30 day?
but it's a 30-day
30 day.
termination.
Is it 30 day?
30-day total termination if you wanted to terminate the
30
contract.
days is 90 days in fire language. All right, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions from council? Would any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? Council, any parting thoughts, comments, or questions? Councilmember Beeson.
Just want to commend Chief Panino on this because of this agreement. Not only, again, are we saving on mileage on the fuel or mileage on the vehicles, saving on the fuel cost, but also making sure that Roswell is safer because our firefighters are not leaving their zones for where their station is located. It decreases their time out of district. So applaud you for that. Otherwise, no, don't have any further questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for bringing this forward. Sarah, Councilmember Beeson, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve resolution for the extension of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Milton and the City of Roswell regarding fire apparatus fueling services.
Thank you, Sarah. Do I have a second for that motion? Second from Councilmember Palermo. All in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Dr. Joe Panino. Councilmember Beeson, would you read the next item, please? Actually, your last item.
Second and last. Approval of a text amendment to Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 8.3, Fire Protection and Prevention of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. This is the second reading. Chief Panino.
Thank you so much. City Attorney Davidson, would you read the ordinance, please, sir?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 8.3, Fire Protection and Prevention of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment, text of which is included herein by reference, and if approved, this is the second reading.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I guess it goes, Chief Panino, it's you, sir.
Thank you. So this is the second reading, as discussed at committee and at the first reading. This ordinance in general hasn't been updated in many years. Some parts of it have been, but the bones of it have not been. So what this does is essentially remove unnecessary language that in some cases conflicts with state law. It also modernizes the language and adds language to protect the city. For instance, adding language in there if we had to mitigate a hazardous material spill, that we could charge the responsible party to recuperate our costs. Also removes language referring to the volunteer fire department. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention between the first reading and the second, we removed one more section from it. So we're from 26 sections down to 18. We found one more section that was unnecessary and was already covered in fire code. I'm not going to go in too much detail, but we'll answer any questions you may have.
Joe, what was that? What's the last one from 1 to 2? Reading 1 to reading 2, did you change? Where is that here?
Yep, that is old section 8.3.1.8, which is 8.3.18, water supply to single-family dwellings that required a property that's subdivided for more than one single-family residence located more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant to have a automatic sprinkler system. And that was written before the fire codes were updated. So there would not be a situation that we would run into where we would face that because the fire code as adopted by the state is more restrictive than that.
So, council, any thoughts, comments, or questions for Dr. Joe Chief Panino? I will say this, there's a lot of work in here, and it's, we're covering this in 3 minutes, and there's been a lot of work put into this, and this is a step in the right direction through a lot of the administrative law, the existing ordinances, and a lot of policies that exist throughout the city. It's a good step, Joe, in the right direction of beginning to diminish some of that. So thank you for your work towards helping to make our government better.
Thank you.
Any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? Council, any final thoughts, comments, or questions? With that being said, Councilmember Beeson, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, please. Motion to approve text amendment to Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 8.3, Fire Protection and Prevention of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. This is the second reading.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Do I have a second on that motion? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Joe. You got now, it's cleaner, baby. Thank you. All right, next is Transportation Department. Councilmember Hills, would you read the first item, please?
Thank you, Mayor, yes. Number 10, item 10, approval to cancel the Woodstock Road northbound left turn lane project at Crabapple Middle School and reallocate the project funds. And we will hear from Transportation Director Jeff Littlefield.
Thanks, Lee. Welcome, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor, Council. This project would have created 150 to 160 feet of storage. It was proposed by RDOT as a preemptive measure to ensure traffic queues did not adversely affect Woodstock Road. Due to the configuration of the parking lot at Crabapple Middle School, this entrance is primarily used as a bus entrance, and it does not pose significant adverse impacts to traffic on Woodstock Road as it currently sits. In addition, in January of this year, the Roswell Transportation Advisory Commission recommended canceling this project and proceeding with placing the rectangular rapid flashing beacon pedestrian signal at crosswalks located in front of the school, which you can see up here in the middle of the screen right at the front of the entrance. The current budget for this project is $350,000. Staff has recommended to cancel this project, and as part of my next item, we would like to recommend reallocating $182,721.10 of the $350,000 to be reallocated to the King Road turn lane project, and the remaining $167,278.90 can be reallocated for future projects as deemed appropriate by the mayor and council. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Jeff, very much. Council, have any thoughts, comments, or questions for Director Littlefield? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just give a shout out to Fulton County Schools for getting it right on the sidewalk on the Crabapple Middle School side of the road. And upon experience of them opening the school, it's flowing beautifully, and we've got a lot of feet moving across the street through that crosswalk. So I'm in full support of doing this and moving that money to better use. And I drive through that every single day, and it's working very well. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Lee. Any other thoughts, Councilmember Worthland?
Just to piggyback on top of what Councilmember Hill said, and also equal shout out goes to the Fulton County Police Department, the school police officers that are out there on the road directing the traffic in the mornings and the afternoons. They're really the ones that are in coordination with the school on the walkie-talkies, talking to the teachers and the principals and making sure everything's a well-oiled machine. When I was dropping my kids off, or my son there, I mean, you were in and out. It was amazing. I was very impressed. I did use that excuse several times for running late to meetings that I was dropping kids off, but no, honestly, it goes really, really well. So good job on this.
Thanks, Willie. Did you have Marley jack up the microphone volume on your particular microphone? Because your voice is much more powerful tonight than the rest of ours. I don't know what you did. Councilmember Beeson?
Yeah, I guess I have probably a question for you. I obviously was out sick during the committee meeting where this was originally discussed. I agree that the carpool does flow quite smoothly over there. My office is down the street from it. I've never had any concerns with it. I have fielded a couple of resident inquiries and in some cases complaints from those who live in houses that are adjacent to the Crabapple Middle School property, where they're, instead of doing carpool, parents are having their kids be walkers and they walk across the street or to an adjacent neighborhood. People's driveways are getting blocked, or they're having issues getting in and out of their neighborhood because the number of cars Is there a way on our side as a city, because again, this is a Fulton County Schools situation, not a City of Roswell situation. Is there any way that we can encourage a better flow of traffic through these residential areas when parents are waiting to pick up their child? Or a way that we can work with Fulton County Schools to encourage this really efficient use of a carpool lane that's working really well? Just because I want to be mindful of these residents who do live nearby and their ability to get in and out of their homes is impacted.
We can certainly look at that, and the RFB that's proposed for there, if this project's canceled, we'll move forward with that. We have the RFB ready to be implemented. So that may help with the cross traffic, but we can certainly look at the flow of traffic through the neighborhoods.
But yeah, because it's, in this situation, to your point, the flow of traffic on Woodstock Road isn't negatively impacted, but it's deferred impact to the surrounding neighborhoods because parents are just waiting for their kids to get out. They don't necessarily have other places to go and wait while they wait for their walker, as you will. I can attest to that. My kids are tiny and little, and we're at a different adjacent school. But I am sympathetic, I guess, to the residents who are nearby.
We'll certainly look at that.
Thanks, Sarah. Councilmember Benstrom.
Yeah, Councilwoman Beeson, just by way of update, the police chief has been notified about this. Yes. And I've had a lot of conversation with him based on the same complaints with the neighbors, and we are currently working on some options to maybe mitigate the fact that people are just parking in those neighborhoods and waiting for their kids, and how that can be slowed down. Now, I will say, when the police are present, they do go and monitor that, and it stops for a while. So there's been an approach to that, but we're trying to find some even long-term solutions. So happy, since you are now the liaison, we'll bring you on board on all that.
That's how I got looped into it, was folks were saying, I've reached out to the chief of police in situations where roads aren't being blocked inherently. It's still a public road. Unless someone's driveway is directly being blocked, then there's not really much that RPD can do to enforce. But it is prohibited to the flow of traffic through the neighborhoods and trying to get on and off of Woodstock Road. Again, I get both sides. I get trying to get your kid from school. I get the carpool lane situation. But at the same time, wanting to be able to get in and out of your home. So
We can work with.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you,
see if
Peter.
there's anything we can do.
Any other thoughts, comments, or questions about this matter from council? I think I remember we had a really good discussion about this particular item in committee. I thought it was very healthy. Would any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? I'll bring it back to council for any final thoughts, comments, or questions. Being none, Councilmember Beeson, would you like to make a motion? This is
I will not
transportation.
usurp Councilmember
Sorry,
Hills.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hills, would you like to make a motion?
I sure would. Motion to approve to cancel the Woodstock Road northbound left turn lane project at Crabapple Middle School and reallocate the project funds.
Thank you, Lee. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Morthland. All in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. All right, Lee, next item, please. Next
Yes, sir.
transportation item.
Item 11, approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a construction contract with Summit Construction and Development for an intersection improvement at Woodstock Road at State Route 92, an extension of the right turn lane on King Road in an amount not to exceed $1,205,196.10, and approval of budget amendment 350-42200-07-10-23. Director Littlefield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This project consists of a new right turn lane from northbound Woodstock Road onto eastbound SR 92, which is Crossville Road, which is shown at the top of the picture here. The project will also extend the northbound right turn lane along King Road up to the Roswell High School Stadium entrance as seen on the bottom picture. In addition, this project includes a new multi-use path and stormwater planters along the west side of King Road. As a result of this project, will improve traffic flow at the intersection of Woodstock Road and SR 92 and relieve queues along northbound King Road. An invitation to bid was issued and the city received 5 bids. Staff completed a review and recommended awarding the contract to Summit Construction and Development, who was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder in the amount of $1,205,196.10. The project current funds available were $1,022,475, and then the $182,721.10 from the Crabapple Middle School turn lane would equal that $1,205,196.10. Staff recommends the approval to sign the construction contract with Summit Construction and Development and accept the funds from the Woodstock Road northbound turn lane project at Crabapple Middle School.
Thanks, Jeff. We had so much talking about this in committee because this one's fun and easy. It's fun when you get a great win, get to talk about it. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions on this particular issue? Councilmember Hills?
I want to talk about it.
I'm afraid you did.
First and foremost, I have to give kudos to Councilmember Palermo because it was 4 short years ago. Was it 19 or 18? I was at a ribbon cutting at Roswell High School with my son, who had just graduated from high school, and ran into Marcelo Zapata and Mike Palermo, and just thanked them for their work. Didn't really know either one of them, and Councilmember Palermo said to me, well, while we're standing here, is there anything that you have on your mind that you think would improve the city? And I talked about this specific area right here and how congested it is during arrival and dismissal of Roswell High School, and how difficult it can be to navigate with, especially if you don't have kids or your kids have graduated or you've just moved here and the school district doesn't apply to you in any way. That's frustrating. It's also frustrating for parents during that time. So having this improved is a long time coming. So thank you for following through on that. I appreciate that. And I also want to say that I fully support this. This can't start quick enough. I'm delighted for the Hornets to have a better route to and from, and it'll only get better from here.
So Lee, there's a lesson there for anybody that's listening, right? Is that
it takes 4 years for Mike Palermo to get anything done?
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, it's a great example that this is the right thing to do, right? It makes sense. One of those things that seems self-evident, and you say, why isn't it happening? Yep. And now it's happening. It's kind of cool.
I'm just busting you
so
there.
People behind this, the residents, when they fund this out, because most residents don't know this is occurring, but when they see this happening, they're going to be like, huh, what? Fantastic. So, Council, any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Councilmember Beeson?
Quick question for you. Is it my understanding that there's going to be no additional crosswalks added based off this spec?
No additional what?
Crosswalks?
There is a crosswalk. That median, the new median island is supposed to be a protected island. You can see the school zone there, and we've been debating on putting a crosswalk at that location. But it's not shown in the picture, but that was brought up at committee, and we're looking at places to place a new crosswalk.
That's the Will Northland Granite
Yes,
median, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I live in that intersection very often, but also when you have that number of teenagers who are just trying to get to point A to point B in the path of least resistance,
Yes.
Want to encourage them to do it safely and not just walking out the road.
And we're looking at the safest possible place to put it, and then we will be looking at that.
Sarah, you're so right about that, because, I mean, probably most of us drive that all the time. And it's too much acceleration in there, and there's just a lot of pedestrian traffic, and the pedestrian traffic will not diminish, it's going to grow. Right. You couldn't be more right. Any other thoughts, comments from council? Councilmember Hall?
This is a little bit off this project, but not appearing on the right-hand side is the extension of this. Do we have another sidewalk project that's going to extend this all the way up to Hardscrapple?
The multi-use trail?
Yes.
Yes, but I don't have the time frame for that, but yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So just for reference, can everybody see this on the screen? I don't know if you're talking about the new multi-use trail there?
Yes.
And you're just kind of making it you're dropping a little seed here to let folks know that there's going to be a connection multi-use trail coming, correct? And you're asking Director Littlefield, hey, Jeff.
Maybe I'm talking out of school.
No, I'm glad you brought it up because it's really relevant and important. Hey, Jeff, when am I getting my multi-use trail to connect to Hardscrabble, correct?
I'll get you a time frame for that.
Okay. Well, we're going to, actually, Mike, you were talking about that earlier. Michael? Yes, sir.
So I'm definitely very excited for an upcoming committee to really talk about some important sidewalk connections going all throughout the city on the east side, the west side, and really to many different places based on staff's lists that we've had for years of both the sidewalk gap list as well as the bike ped master plan. So definitely looking forward to a upcoming committee meeting to talk about how to get the residents a lot of bang for their buck.
Are you talking about the one that I lost on my loop that you guys have now killed and come up with your own plan? Is that what you're talking about, that one?
Making sure we're prioritizing all over the city for the long list that our residents have had for many years.
Thanks, Mike. You're right. When do we get that out? When do we discuss that matter?
So be looking to discuss that the end of July committee meeting.
Okay. End of July?
End of July.
I probably won't be here, so you guys will have a lot of fun without me. All right.
You won't have to cry about
I'll be crying, and you know I'm going to be crying about this.
Residents all
We're
over
going
the
to have a
city.
lot of conversations about it. All right. Any other thoughts, comments? Councilmember Vanstrom.
Last one, I just have to compliment you, Mr. Littlefield. On your resume, when you were applying for this position, it said attention to detail, and to have this down to the very dime is really impressive. I've never seen anything budgeted at $1 million down to 10 cents. That's something.
That's right. 10-cent buffer.
All right, so the period is not a typo. I was afraid that period was not meant to be there.
No, we were requesting money from the other projects, so we wanted to make sure we had.
Got to be precise, exactly.
On a serious note, as Councilmember Hills mentioned, just really excited about this one. That bottleneck creates such an issue for so many in Roswell, going to Roswell High School, even just driving nearby on 92, by eliminating this bottleneck, it's going to be a big improvement. And it was really big that we got the median island as well, which will certainly make things safer for the drivers. And given the fact that although currently students should not cross there, at the end of the day, students are going to cross where they cross, and so I'm glad that we make just everything as safe as we can. So really, really glad about what staff's done here.
So we talked about this in committee, Jeff, but maybe just to illuminate for us, when does this project start? When do we start, and when is it completed?
If we sign the contract, as soon as we initiate the notice to proceed, it lasts for 540 calendar days. Contract terms.
So if this passes
basically
tonight, which looks like it's a
and some
great
change.
peril, I don't know if it's going to pass, but if it passes tonight, we're going to sign the documents tomorrow. You're good to go, right, to issue the NTP?
Yeah, so we'll have to get some contract documents in place, and then we'll be good to go to issue the notice to proceed.
And then basically a year and a half to complete.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Jeff, I think that would come back again, right? So, have I taken it to Roswell residents? I can't remember. Yes? Okay. Were there any Roswell residents like to weigh in on this matter? Comment, any additional comments, final comments from council? Councilmember Hills would like to make a motion.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a construction contract with Summit Construction and Development for an intersection improvement at Woodstock Road at State Route 92 and extension of the right turn lane on King Road in amount not to exceed $1,205,196.10, and approval of budget amendment 350-42200-07-10-23.
Thank you, Lee. Is there a second from Councilmember Palermo? All in favor of passing this motion, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Littlefield. Last item is City Attorney Davidson. Would you read your last item, or the only item on this report?
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate.
Do I have a motion for closure? Motion from Councilmember Palermo. Where are you going, big boy? Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Avison. All in favor of going to closure, please raise your hands. We go to closure. Thank you. It's passed unanimously. All right. Being that there are no other items, looks like I'm by myself, this mayor and council meeting of July 10th, 2023 is adjourned, and now we're going to go work for 10 hours. So let's go.